Welcome to Telegram.com, Telegram Network. This is the Oddity Report. I'm your host, Dnota. I'm joined today by my host, Dua. Dua, say what's up to the people.
What's up, people?
So listen, today we got an interesting conversation that's lined up, right? Like today's conversation is focused on relationships, interesting types of relationships. So over the weekend, I was watching, it's a new Netflix show. It's rather popular. It's called Tell Them You Love Me. Have you seen it yet?
I did see it. I watched it with my boyfriend.
Well, what are your thoughts about it?
You know, I had a lot of thoughts.
First, before you get into like your thoughts, and I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Mhm.
but maybe give a little bit of background about what the documentary was about.
Yes. So it's about this Black family where the mother has two sons. One son is able-bodied, and the other son has cerebral palsy. And the older son is in the PhD program, and one of his professors is into something called facilitated communication, where they help people like Derrick, that's the name of the son with cerebral palsy,
Okay.
communicate with their family, their peers, etc. And so he inquires about, this professor. Her name is
Okay.
Anna, to potentially help his brother Derrick.
Okay.
And long story short, she ends up having a sexual relationship with Derrick.
Okay.
She confesses to the family, like she and Derrick confess to the family. And subsequently, the family takes her to court and says that the relationship that she had with Derrick, also called Dman, was not consensual.
Okay. Okay.
So that's the summary.
Thank you for that summary, that
Sure.
recap. So, what did you make of the documentary? What did you make of the relationship between Derrick or D-Man and Anna?
At first I felt like her methods were effective. And I say that because
And by methods, you're talking about facilitative
communication.
Okay.
Yes, FC.
Just for clarity.
So the way it works in the documentary is that the disabled person communicates via a computer, and the FC professional helps said person by holding their hand, guiding, helping them because they have tremors or whatnot. So kind of helping to steady their hands while they communicate.
Okay.
So at first I was like, oh, this sounds great because she would describe D-Man as feeling like he now has a voice. He was voiceless before and he can like participate in life. And she got him enrolled in a African American studies course at Rutgers. And he was writing papers, participating in class via Anna because he would type in his little computer and she would read his comments and like therefore should be his like intermediary.
Okay. Like an
Right.
interpreter.
Yes. So I thought, oh, this is great, right? This is opening up this channel for those with this disability. But then when the story turned towards the sexual lane, I just felt like, as someone who doesn't know anything, I'm a layman. I have friends and family who are not disabled. I just felt like, does D-Man experience sexual urges? And so it just made me feel like she was taking advantage of this poor disabled boy.
Okay. So continue. I'm sorry.
So yeah, I felt, his mother was enraged and I felt the same way. I felt like this was all Anna talking about, oh, I'm in love with your son and he's in love with me. But does he know what love means? She said that they made love, and how was he able to participate? I just felt really, what's the word? I just felt disgusted. I
You
just
felt
couldn't believe
disgusted.
that this woman, to me, she took advantage of D-Man.
I watched the documentary as well. And my take on it, I have actually a different read on it because I'm looking at it from the vantage point of D-Man. Here you have this gentleman with a severe impairment that limits his ability to be communicative, limits his ability to move, And here you have this angel.
Angel.
You have this woman who is showing him affection and love,
Hmm.
and they develop a sensual bond. And because they develop a bond that's not always apparent, on a surface, but this is her working in close proximity with him over an extended length of time and developing this love and this fondness of him, and is able to see past his physical disability. Now, for me, as I'm seeing this love story unfold, I am astonished that here you have this female who's able to look past his flaws and willing to embrace him for the essence of his being in terms of who he is, and seeing past his disabilities and seeing past his limitations. Now, on the other hand, with all due respect to his mother, but I see a mother who loves her child, and you can never fault the parent for loving their child and wanting to be protective. But as I'm observing this relationship unfold, it's as if, she really is in it to protect her relationship more than wanting to see her son develop, evolve into a man. Because at the time of their interaction, meaning Anna and Dman, he was already 30 years old. Now, granted, they say, in terms of the mom's view, is, well, he can't communicate, he can't consent. But the reality is that, as you've seen in the documentary, the mother expressed that, she just didn't describe, but D-Man does communicate. And so they even, meaning the family of D-Man, acknowledged that he made significant improvements in terms of his ability to communicate once Anna came into the picture. There was some debate over whether or not they were actually his words versus Anna, substituting his words for that of her own. But putting all of that aside, you have someone, in terms of Anna, willing to, take a chance on love. That's really what this story is. It's a love story. But when we look at, from a societal vantage point, a person, because when you look at D-Man, and this is not a slur, it's just an observation, he appears to be impaired. He has certain physical characteristics, facial expressions, right? That becomes wholly apparent that he has some challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Anna, this Snow White, sort of Disney movie savior swooping in to help D-Man see that, hey, D-Man, you may not have the intellect, but you have a penis, and I'm going to help you put that to work. And so, really, when you look at what her motives were, they were simply designed for the purposes of helping D-Man experience the pleasures of life. And so his mom, they were sheltering him. They didn't want him to be able to, know what the beauties of sex entails, because they are concerned that if they were to awaken that, like what that would mean. And so they want to protect them from the pleasures of the penis or of the vagina. And so, should Anna have been arrested for what she had done?
Here's the thing, Dnota. What I failed to mention during my synopsis was Anna was married with children. Okay. So she had a functioning, or maybe I should say, she had a non-disabled penis at home.
Okay.
And she chose to align with a penis that's disabled.
Well, listen, there's a song out Came out many years ago by Babyface. It goes, love makes things happen. It does. It makes things happen. It could take people from different, areas of life and bring them together in ways that the two of them may not have ever even conceived or considered. What you really have is a love story. And the fact that, like for me, as I look at their relationship, I see his mother and his brother not doing it in a spiteful or vengeful manner in terms of wanting to keep him away from relationships, but it was purely out of the fear of what could become of if someone has a nefarious interest in terms of wanting to control, wanting to, interfere in their interaction with their son or with their sibling. And I really didn't see that from Anna, because if you watch that documentary closely, they laid the predicate. They showed how Anna came from a family, her parents, they work with disabled or impaired children. They work closely with them. I mean, Anna isn't blind, nor is anyone in her immediate, family blind, but they taught her to read Braille. So she really knows how to connect with individuals with disabilities on a real fundamental level. And as for the husband, I get it. Look, sometimes you get into relationships and they don't work out. Now, perhaps if his family didn't interfere, the two of them would still be in a relationship today. And so I'm disheartened by the fact that here you have Dman, who was doing so good. I mean, he misses Anna so much. His mother, as she indicated during the documentary, like, Dman still masturbates. And
Dnota, I have to cut you off here. Let's not forget the part in the documentary where they sent Anna away, right? They dismissed her from her services, and they could not communicate with Dman, right? Which gives the appearance
because
that
they refused to use the technology facilitative communication.
They were. Remember when, I think the brother's name is John, he said he couldn't figure out what he was doing wrong. He was using all of Anna's techniques and could not communicate with his brother. And when they had a third-party doctor examine Dman, they said he was functioning at a level of a kindergartner. Okay, which makes it seem like Anna was pretending to be the savior who was the only one who can communicate with Dman, but she was communicating with herself. She was using Dman as a puppet.
I don't
Dnota.
agree with that. I think
How
she
could
was,
you not?
because if you really watch the documentary, because most people will claim I watched the documentary, but did they really watch the documentary? Did they really sit there and give their undivided attention to all of the facts? Because as I've watched the documentary, it's clear in terms of their objective was to vilify Anna. And Anna isn't a villain. She's actually a victim of a system that says those with disabilities are not entitled to love. And I don't think that the fact that someone has a disability, that disqualifies them from being able to have romantic encounters with individuals of the opposite gender if they choose to. We're not
saying that. We're talking about consent here. Dman did not consent.
Well, she says that he did. And also, if you remember, Sharandra, who was his assistant, that when he enrolled into the university, assisted him with authoring term papers. And she indicated, in my understanding by watching the documentary, she said so under oath during one of her police interviews, that he authored every word. So you can't have it both ways. The institution, the university, hired her. If she engaged in any type of, fraud or inappropriate conduct in that regard, she would have been held to account. I mean, the university have zero tolerance policies pertaining to the authoring of term papers, and that the individual who submits those papers do so on a penalty of perjury, right? Because there are rules, there are academic criterias that govern the authoring of term papers and any works that you submit to your professor. Did you hear the professor allege that he didn't author those papers? You didn't.
The professor didn't seem convinced. If you recall, she was like, he allegedly authored the papers.
Well,
He allegedly used FC. She didn't seem to buy it. If you really listen to her tone, you know,
I mean, the professor, she's a professor in what area?
African American studies.
And not in that of communication.
No,
Okay.
not to our
So,
knowledge. We just know her as an African
well,
American
she never postured or indicated that she was an expert in communication.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and I think everyone is entitled to their opinion, to be skeptical about certain things, and I take that. But she did not say in an affirmative matter that he did not author the paper. What she merely did was, perhaps based upon everything that she know retrospectively, perhaps looking back, I don't think the question was ever posed to her whether or not during the time in which these papers were submitted, were they actually Dman's work. Because I guarantee if she suspected that he did not author those papers, then she had an ethical obligation, right, to take some type of corrective measures, which she didn't. So I think in terms, for the purposes of our discussion, we have to presume, because there's nothing that was suggested otherwise, that he didn't author those papers. Because the question becomes, look, is a person with disabilities, disqualified from being able to have love? Is a person who has disabilities, are they incapable of competing academically? I mean, if you're willing to say yes and yes to both of those questions, I think that speaks to a broader issue concerning society, whether or not we're willing to extend an open opportunity for individuals of various walks of life, disabilities, and challenges, whether or not we're going to offer them the same exact opportunity, and whether or not they could perform, they could compete. Dman could compete. Dman did well in college. And we had Sharandra who says he did. So it's not just Anna saying that he's using this machine, right? It's not just Anna, it's Sharandra too. So if you say that, well, there's a question, yeah, it's a question. We can always have questions. But at the end of the day, I think it would be wrong to just be dismissive of the prospects of Dman having actually authored the papers. And so the next question becomes, well, did he actually consent? I think it's clear that he did.
How can he consent when he's nonverbal? How?
Well, sometimes there's a person who's deaf, right? They communicate by way of sign language, right? So there's expressive ways of being able to communicate. And so based upon her interaction with Dman and having these conversations with him as facilitated through this communicative facilitating device, she says that he did. Now, she ultimately was convicted.
Mm-hmm.
And the judge prohibited her from being able to, make the argument to the jury relating to his ability to consent by way of submitting that facilitative communication device, saying that this is the manner in which he was able to consent. And the judge disallowed it. And what's interesting about that is that, yeah, she was convicted. She was sentenced to 12 years in prison, but that judge and that the jury's verdict was overturned on appeal, which suggests that there was some problems in terms of whether or not Anna did get full due process, whether or not she received a fair trial. Because if a person is saying that, yes, the person's consented, and here's how, even if the judge didn't believe it, but not to allow that information to go to a jury, and for a jury at minimum be given an opportunity to consider it. And that's problematic for a number of reasons, because under our rules and laws, an individual, right, has a right to a fair trial by an impartial jury, the right to confront witnesses and evidence. So and to present evidence as well. So her evidence was, look, here's this technology that she didn't invent it, right? She didn't invent this mechanism by which they were communicating. This is something that she adopted. And so for the judge not to allow that is problematic. And I think the appeals court made an appropriate determination in that verdict could not stand.
That doesn't mean she doesn't believe that she doesn't belong in prison. Here's another thing that we have not considered in this conversation is, did Anna have romantic relationships with other disabled with cerebral palsy? That's something that we don't know, right? And the fact still remains that an external doctor said that Dman functions at a kindergarten level. So yes, kindergartners can know what love is. They can express what love is, but can they ask or want for intimacy?
I mean, the reality is, and I take your point, and you raise a legitimate issue retrospectively about whether, like, what was the extent of her conduct, whether or not it was in fact limited to Dman. But then we're just getting into areas of speculation because there was no additional allegations, and you didn't see the mom nor the brother speculate in that respect.
But here's the thing. They would have never known that Anna and Dman had a romantic relationship had they not, in quotes, had they not confessed.
Well,
correct?
Let me ask you this question. Do you have a problem with Dman having an intimate relationship because of his impairment?
No, I don't have a problem with him having a relationship because of his impairment. I have a problem with who he had the relationship with. Had it been another disabled person, it would be more palatable to me. But this woman is married. She's a professional. She knows, I'm sure she takes ethics courses like the rest of us in the professional world, especially as a practitioner. And for you to have a romantic, not even a sexual.
You sound like Bigum Bigsby. Whites to stay with the whites, the blacks to stay with the blacks, the disabled with the disabled. I mean,
Dnota,
at the end of the
she was married
she
with
may have
children.
She may have been married.
She's diabolical.
So you're telling me that because a person is in a marriage that they can't fall out of love with each other and they both move on and pursue other opportunities?
You're skirting around the issue here. The issue is she had an extramarital affair, okay, while still married. Presumably living in the same house as her husband.
Listen, I don't condone infidelity, but we don't know the full depth of whether or not, the relationship between her and her husband was just, beyond repair. It could have been irreparable. And in her view, that even though they may have been legally married and shared obligations with respect to the children and the debt, but in terms of her autonomy of self, she felt like because they were not together, she justified it. I'm not here to second guess other people's decisions in terms of how they pursue their relationship. And I'm not endorsing or sanctioning or ratifying her choice to commit an act of infidelity. What I'm dealing with is the question with regards to these two people, Dman and Anna, right? Being able to have a loving relationship without being interfered with by this legal system.
Okay. Another point in the documentary was where they talked about how FC is not reliable. Okay. They showed us the results of a double-blind test. Do you remember this?
Okay.
Where they showed the facilitator an image, then they showed the disabled person an image, and then the disabled person had to type what they saw. Each person saw a separate image, right? Each time the subject had to type the image that they saw, it was always what the facilitator saw and not what the disabled person saw, which made it seem like this hand holding to keep the hand steady was not guided, right? It was interpreted.
I mean, look, to be honest with you, and I take your point, but I don't care what she did with that hand. Because the reality is, like, if you really look at a picture, and when I want all of you, if you get a chance, take a second look at this documentary, but I want you to pay particular attention to the beginning when they show photos of Dman versus towards the end. Now, for me, I am a very close observer. And what I observed was significant improvements in his overall complexion. So I think that what Anna did was therapeutic in nature. And I think that that's part of the problem with our society, is that we relegate people with these disabilities in terms of, because you made a statement to the effect of, well, you know, if he was dating someone else, and I'm not quoting you verbatim, but to this effect, oh, if he was dating someone else who was impaired, like that'd be more palatable. And that's problematic because, again, love doesn't have any age. Well, it does have an age, but it doesn't have a gender. It doesn't have a race. It doesn't have an ability or a disability. It's just two people. If they get together, right, they should be able to love each other as long as they're doing so in a wholesome way. They're doing it in a respectful way.
Dnota.
And
There's nothing wholesome or respectful about this.
I think the whole look. You got to understand, like, Dman, he lives a sheltered life. What other opportunities was available for his parents, for his mom, to even know what he's capable of doing in that respect? Because that's his mom. She's not looking to see if whether or not he's sexually stimulated, whether or not he feels a void that he wants to express himself sexually. And what Anna did was just serve as that outlet.
No. I mean, here's the thing. I hear everything that you're saying, right? But the fact remains, to me, Anna was brought into Dman's life to improve his communication with his family, right? That's first and foremost. He was nonverbal, right?
To help him improve his communication, and she did, because she was able to provide him with the language of sex.
Okay,
and that's something
not what she was brought in to do. She was brought in to help
communication.
Give him a voice. Yes, give him a voice. She did not.
She helped him bring out the moaning sounds that he didn't know was there. No, he would not have known otherwise that he had that ability to experience the glory of that type of romantic interaction.
But here's the thing. How do we know that he enjoyed it? Let's be real.
Well, we don't know that he didn't either.
Okay.
Right. So we're back at square one.
Right. But let me, I already mentioned this, but I will reiterate. Once Anna was out of the picture and John, the oldest brother, tried to implement FC, it was a disaster.
Well,
right?
I want to answer your question.
Okay. What was my question?
You said, I want to go back for a second. Mm-hmm. You said, well, how do we know that he enjoyed it? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we don't have any statements from him saying that he did.
Right.
So we could only approach it objectively and look at what objective piece of evidence or information is available that gives us insight into whether or not he enjoyed it.
Okay, which
is his mother made a statement. She says after the interaction with Anna discontinued to occur, he began to masturbate. Now that was very telling for me, because she took care to note that he had not done that before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he has his interaction with Anna. He's being sexually stimulated. Anna's no longer in his life. He's masturbating after that encounter or after those encounters. Now, for me, looking at that piece of objective information, that suggests that he did like it. Why? Because he is trying to recapture that experience. And if he didn't like it, he certainly wouldn't seek to repeat it or to recapture that experience. So I think if you look objectively, not with a sense of judgment, not with a sense of expectation, but just in terms of saying, you know, this is the manner in which people communicate through words and through actions. So he can't say he enjoyed it, but we could look at his behavior, how he behaved prior to their encounters and then after the encounters. Prior to their encounters, no masturbation. After their encounters, plenty of masturbation.
Okay.
And the mother seemed rather annoyed by seeing this because it's almost as if, you know, was Dman expecting her to go over there and say, okay, buddy, I'll oil you down?
Dnota. I think we should take a step back, take several steps back. He's disabled. Is he aware of his penis? Is he? And I
he
say
urines
this because
through it.
he's in a diaper.
Okay.
He's not physically touching his penis to urinate. Okay, like let's think about it. He's
now
using
he's
a
not
diaper.
aware of his penis.
I don't think so. I don't think so. And the reason I make this statement is because I agree with the word that you use, awakening. I think Anna awakened his knowledge that he has a penis. He was stimulated because she talked about how the first time they did it, it wasn't successful. These were her words in the documentary, by the way. So,
my sister's big-breasted friends awakened mine.
okay, but were you aware of big breasts before seeing your sister's big-breasted friends? Anyway, let me finish.
All right.
So his penis was in a diaper. Anna awakened it. She used it, right?
Yes.
He is a male.
Oh, he gave it to her?
I think she took it.
Well, we weren't there.
We weren't, but he is nonverbal. She took it. So now something has been awakened in him. He's a male, a horn dog, right? What do young adolescents do with their penises?
All right, this what I think will clear up this whole case, because that's really what it comes down to, whether or not Dman consented. I think that's what everybody is hung up on, whether or not he consented. And what we don't know is the finite details of their interaction. I think if we knew whether or not Dman was thrusting into her, perhaps that would be indicative of him liking it. Now, the brother indicated during his interview was that there were scars on his back. He was being spread eagle on the floor and dragged. And so we're not clear in terms of those scars. They didn't provide us with any photos. So we're only left to speculate in terms of the size, the mass of the, if any lacerations he received. He could have just received scratches. It wasn't too clear on that detail. But most importantly, what we were also deprived of as viewers was the ability to see Dman in action. We was deprived of the ability. Would
you want to see that, sir?
Absolutely, because I think, look, what we're dealing with, and what I want to see is, and I'm not saying I don't want to see them have sexual intercourse. I would like to have seen Dman interacting with, people. We didn't even see him interacting with his family, with his mom, with his sibling. We only seen still shot photos, and towards the end, we seen the brother so lovingly helping his brother, mobilize throughout the house. And that was a beautiful sight to see. But again, in terms of the question of consent and whether or not Dman enjoyed it, I mean, we always are quick to rush to, the simplest explanation. But I think here, this is a nuanced documentary. I think when you look at it in terms of without judgment, without expectation. Like it allows for you to see how love between two people could flourish, and and people who are you know, have, because of the way society is constructed, there are certain norms that anything that affronts those norms are going to be considered taboo. It's taboo for a prestigious university professor at Rutgers to have a relationship with someone who has these physical, mental impairments. It's taboo. It's something. It doesn't look right. It doesn't feel right. And I'm not knocking anyone for making judgments in that respect, because that's the only information. If that's the only thing that you have to go by, you have to go by it. But when you know better, you do better, right? And so if we consider D-Man as a man, because D-Man constructed that nickname for himself, because she was of the impression that his name was Derrick. And then she had a conversation, right? Anna, you remember that?
I do.
Right? He said, "Yo, he likes to be called D-Man." And
But
I
remember,
think
that nickname came from his schooling. A teacher, a random teacher called him D-Man. He liked it.
and he adopted it.
Anna asked him, "What do you want me to call you?"
Okay.
That's when he said D-Man. It didn't come from nowhere, right? Someone called him that.
Yeah, but Anna certainly didn't introduce that to him.
Sure.
He introduced that to Anna.
Yes.
And
yes.
only thing the parents did was provide some historical information or origins, right? A story of origin in terms of this is where it came from.
Yeah.
But Anna didn't have any knowledge of that when she learned of it.
Yeah.
And
But you know what? I have to say one thing. You know, this documentary, we hear the voice of the mother, the brother, Anna's mother, Shonda, the professor.
Exactly.
And to your point, we do not get Derrick's perspective.
you
We
don't get
hear-
nothing from him. You
But
don't get
you think that's telling? Right? Because if this facilitated communication was effective, then why didn't we hear Derrick's voice via FC?
because the parents said, the mom rather, because his dad, as the documentary indicated, and we don't intend to spoil, but we assume that most people, by the time you get to hearing this conversation, you've watched the documentary. It wouldn't make any sense otherwise. But his mom said how when he that they stopped using it. They stopped using it. So they went.
Because-
And also keep in mind, there was some litigation. There was a $4 million lawsuit that was mounted against, I believe, the university as well as Anna. And so I think because some of those litigations may in fact still be pending. So it makes it makes good sense why they would not avail him for the interview. But outside of just communicating, we don't see any type of interaction. Dman, like everyone is talking about him, right? Making representations of who he is, but we don't get a chance to see him. We don't get a chance to even appreciate him. And I think that's unfortunate. I think that was a missed opportunity.
I disagree. I think that if the form of communication was effective, then they should have Derrick communicating via FC. I think they should have had him sitting in front of a computer and typing out responses, just like they were asking Anna questions, mom questions,
But they
etc.
couldn't do it without their permission. The mom said no.
But no, I don't remember her saying that. I don't recall that.
Okay, well, at the end of the documentary, it says that they discontinued the use of it.
Because it wasn't effective, Dnota. They mentioned that they tried it without Anna. Why should Anna be around?
But
right? They have the typewriter. They hold the Derrick's arm, right, to stabilize it.
Okay, but he's a 30-year-old man. He went to various schools, various trainings outside. When you're dealing with the facilitative communication, that was just in addition to. I mean, he could hold up a sign. He could point to a picture. I think that the problem for the documentary is that D-Man's voice is missing completely. And I'm not just talking about in terms of vocal, but just mere presence. You don't get that.
You know, I agree with you. However, I disagree about the mere presence because they have videos of him, right, throughout the interview, sitting next to the brother, interacting with the mother. We just don't hear his voice, but we see him. And I have to say, you also mentioned that there was a marked improvement in Dnota. In
It is a marked
Dman.
improvement in me, though.
In Dman from the beginning of the documentary to the end. However, they did say the school that they sent him in, he went from being in a wheelchair, right, and
Okay.
through the what's the word? Through the offerings. I'm using that's not the right word, but through going to that particular school
Okay.
or what have
He
you.
went to
He was
school.
able to walk.
He was able
right?
to walk. He
So
was
that's
able to make some.
improvement outside of FC. This is just like
100%.
physical. It's kind of like physical therapy,
Yep.
right? He went from wheelchair to using his legs. He's not so stable. He needs some assistance in walking, but that's a huge leap from being in a wheelchair,
Absolutely.
right? So what was missing, he was in the documentary, physically in the documentary, but what was missing was his voice.
But you don't think he's being sheltered? I mean, his parents, and again, I don't have an issue with being protective of those who are vulnerable. I think that's important because there are people out there who certainly would seek to take advantage. I think, you have the brother who trusted Anna.
Mhm.
And so he's the one who introduced Anna into his sibling's life.
Mhm.
And so in his judgment was such that, hey, from what I know about her, I'm willing to ask her to assist and help make my brother's life better, because he had to have some level of trust. And so now when this is the woman that he trusts, and she's having this relationship that she contends is consensual. But because he doesn't like it and the mom doesn't like it, well, he now arbitrarily gets to say, look, I don't trust her anymore. And I don't believe when she says that he consented by way of the facilitative communication or based upon their interaction. And I don't think that you can have it both ways. I mean, trust is the ability to and also keep in mind, this is important as well. Anna came out and exposed their relationship. It wasn't as if something that they had come upon. Anna came to the mom, came to the brother and said, look, we're having this. And I'm not quoting them verbatim. I'm just quoting in some in substance. Look, I'm having this relationship. We love each other. I'm willing to do some bizarre shit, sign my name in blood. Like, I'm willing to do whatever. Like, I even give you some, bro. Like, but I want you to know, like, I'm going to leave my husband and I'm going to start my life with Dman, and we're going to be together forever, and I'm going to change his diapers and everything like that. Like, I'm willing to do that. And I mean, she is entitled to some level of, like, she should be applauded for that in some respect. Like, I think certainly given her relationship as being in that position of authority, we certainly ought to expect better, and she should have done better in that respect. But there is more layers to what had occurred between them that I think, we would be in error to just outright call her a criminal or say that she assaulted him.
She did.
Because we cannot say that for certain, because the trial didn't allow for the jury to know a vital piece of evidence that was important to their consideration, because that's the key. Perhaps if they allow for that evidence to be, shown to the jury could have heard it. The jury may have rejected it, and the jury may still have returned a guilty verdict. But that's not what happened. What happened here was she was deprived of being able to mount a viable defense. The jury were deprived of information that they should have had available just for the mere purposes of their consideration.
Let me go back to when you said that D-Man was sheltered. I agree that he was sheltered, but I really don't blame his family.
You don't blame his family.
And here's why, right? The mother, this is the mother's biological son. She raised both children as a single mom. Husband left her, what have you. And so she had to be the one to take care of her child, even when she didn't understand what his disability was. So it's hard to go from, okay, I have this child. He has this disability. He's nonverbal. He couldn't even walk, remember? He was in a wheelchair.
Yes.
So how can you say, I don't call that sheltering. I call that providing for your disabled child. Now, I do agree with you in that, Anna had some aspects where she had Dman's best interest because she talked about he expressed wanting to live on his own, wanting to live in some kind of assisted living facility. And I think that could have been a positive, right? Giving Derrick a sense of he's a man in age, giving him a sense of independence from his mom, who has been his primary caretaker his entire life. However, there's still that nefarious, she wants him, okay, and I'm going to interrupt myself here.
That's fine.
When she had relations with Derrick, it was always when the mother was away at church. Okay, so that gives you the idea that she's sneaking around with this disabled guy to be romantic with him, and now she's giving him ideas to, you can absolutely move out, you can absolutely gain your independence through an assisted living facility, meaning she herself can come and go as she pleases, right?
Okay.
So I understand what you're saying about him being sheltered, absolutely, but I don't think it was something that was done intentionally.
No, I don't think so
right?
either.
When he's disabled, he's nonverbal.
He's nonverbal,
right?
But I think all right, let's say you have this ability to play the piano.
Mm-hmm.
It's an inherent ability that it's within you. You're not, it's a latent ability, meaning you're not even aware of this ability, right? And then one day you go to, I don't know, church. You go sit down at the organ and you begin to play, and it's like, wow, I didn't know I could do that. I could do that. And we could think of a number of things you may not have known about your hidden talents. And I think this is apropos in that Dman didn't know what he can do.
I agree with you.
He didn't know that he had the ability to have someone of her stature who was willing to throw it all away for a piece of his magic stick.
Stop right there. So when you're talking about he didn't know that he had certain abilities, I'm thinking of take care of himself, have a conversation.
Or to please a woman.
Okay. We're not going to talk about that.
I'm talking about
but
is that
abilities
not an ability?
like I can get an education.
She was willing to throw her whole life away for this.
I don't think she never thought she was doing anything wrong. Let's think about the way she spoke throughout the documentary.
But that speaks to D-Man's capability. And I don't want that to escape any of us as we have this discussion, because I know there's going to be plenty more discussions about this. I mean, it's a fascinating tale about love. It's almost like a Romeo and Juliet story.
This is how you take it? You're taking this as a love story?
Absolutely, because that's what it is.
I think not what it
that's
is.
exactly what it is. I mean, D-Man, look, I don't look at what he can't do. I'm looking at what he can do.
Which is what?
He's able to please a woman. A woman who was married with 2 children.
Here's the thing.
And he caused her to be willing to sign her name in blood.
Here's the thing.
That speaks to some magnificent ability.
I think that speaks to psychosis. However, here's the thing. Did she ever say in the documentary that she was pleased? No. She
Did they ask if she was pleased?
Well, why wouldn't she mention it? She talked about everything else.
I mean, they were asking her questions. So, I mean, I take your point, but I don't think that question was posed to her.
Sure.
I don't think they ever posed to her, hey, were you pleased by it? But she did say, if we look at some of the adjectives that she did use, she spoke of love. She spoke of, admiration in sum and substance, of course. I'm not quoting any of this verbatim, but And she spoke affectionately about him as well. And she also mentioned, she made clear, look, I'm going to, and she made assurances to the mom. Look, I'm going to leave my husband. D-Man is going to be the only D that I see.
Dnota.
She did. So I think at the end of the day, it's like the real question that we wrestling with as a society is whether or not like people, because it's almost you know, as the description of the documentary holds, these are issues concerning race, sex, impairments, right? And you have all of these assortment of issues, and people seek to malign Anna and says that, you know, because her husband didn't have anything nice to say about her.
Why
You remember?
would he? Yeah, why would
And
he?
yeah, she broke his heart. I mean, she
I
broke his
mean,
heart,
she
and
broke
she
the
tried to
covenant
break
of their marriage
D-Man's
too.
phallus.
Dnota.
But D-Man's phallus seems to be more resilient than their
Dnota.
marriage.
I think what we have to remember here is that D-Man was deemed to be operating at a kindergarten level. So Anna made
You
D-Man
ever
into
seen
what she
Kindergarten Cop?
wanted. Anna made
You
D-Man
ever
into
seen
what she
Kindergarten Cop?
wanted. D-Man was Anna's puppet, okay?
Listen, you saying as if just because a kid is, you know, a person's in kindergarten, they not smart. Like if you
I
seen
didn't say
Kindergarten
that he's
Cop,
not smart.
like that Kindergarten Cop was like locking up grown men.
Okay. That what you're saying
And we
doesn't
were,
make
and
any
in this
sense.
case here, we're not talking about a grown man. We're talking about an adult. When D-Man began to have intimacy with Anna, he was 30 years old.
But that doesn't make him an adult.
And you know what? To be honest with you, you look at like the people around him, just cock blockers.
Oh my
They
God.
was cock blocking. I mean, D-Man right now, like I'm worried about him in terms of like having all of this love and no one to share it with in a romantic way.
Who's to say that he won't find love?
Not the way he's being sheltered.
I don't. So, okay. If he were indeed being truly sheltered, his family wouldn't be getting him services. He wouldn't be getting him outside services. He would not be allowed to leave his home. But the fact is, he has been getting services since he was young. He interacts with other people with disabilities.
Okay,
right?
but let me ask
with
you,
other medical professionals. So he's not truly sheltered.
All right, so I'm gonna ask you a question. It's gonna sound kind of crass, but I want your honest answer.
Mm-hmm.
Can D-Man do better than Anna?
Yes. Anna is diabolical.
Yeah, but she don't look diabolical. She
Well,
look normal
her
compared to what
actions.
would be available to him.
So we're talking about physical here?
I'm
Physical
talking
appearance?
about intellect. Like here she is with a PhD.
Yes.
He could learn so much from her.
What can she learn from him? She's teaching him how to communicate.
Yes, communicate using verbal and nonverbal, and I think the nonverbal, in terms of the physical interaction, falls under that auspice. But again, you know, here's the deal, because I'm not here in defense of Anna. I'm not.
You sound like you are.
But I'm not. I'm here trying to bring texture and objectivity and slowing the process down so we could have a broader view in terms of all of the different elements so that they could be taken into consideration. My view on Anna is that here you have someone looking at her through her life experiences, growing up with parents who had a special affinity for or affection for those who life dealt additional burdens and challenges to, and being empathetic and sympathetic to individuals with these types of challenges. I look at D-Man as a young man who's sheltered, who basically was not aware of his romantic desires until Anna entered the picture. And she was able to bring that out of him. And
if you guys can see me right now, I am rolling my eyes, just to let you know, visual.
well, that, you know, but and then I look at D-Man as saying, well, because he's nonverbal, we can only look at what his mom says in terms of how she characterizes the relationship that D-Man had with Anna. And so we don't hear D-Man's voice. We don't see D-Man interacting. We don't know what his capabilities are. Like, we're still left wanting at the end of that documentary because we don't know anything about D-Man, and D-Man is still alive. And the documentary was postured in such a way where you would be of the assumption that he's met his demise, that he was dead, and
What?
he was totally devoid from the documentary. And I think if D-Man was, they could have had experts. They could have had, an expert who specialized in sexuality, specialized in people who suffer from disabilities and impairments, and how they relate to love, and how they interpret or how they communicate. Like, but they didn't have that, and that's the problem. See, the problem for me is that there were more questions than answers, and so a lot of people come away hating or disliking Anna, and I can understand that. But we don't know enough about D-Man other than what was presented by his mom, and we know why. I'm not shaming the mom. I understand. That's his mom. She wants to protect him, and anyone that she deems or views as being a threat to the health and safety of her child, that she's going to deem them to be an enemy. So I don't fault her, and I don't fault the brother either. What I am saying is, put D-Man's mom and brother aside, and where is D-Man in this equation? He's absent. That's unfortunate.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you might have to write in with your opinions. Let us know.
Please.
Do you think that D-Man was capable of consent? Do you think that Anna was noble in trying to give D-Man a voice?
Okay.
Let us know. You've heard my opinion. You've heard Dnota's opinion. Let us know how you ring in.
Please. And we're going to be giving new episodes every week. Stay tuned. This is telegram.com, Telegram Network. This is the Oddity Report. Thank you all.